Hey, it's James here from Espresso Resto, where restored is the new. Today we're going to look at the Nuova Simonelli Oscar and how to install an overpressure valve to one of the models that didn't come with an overpressure valve. Here in Australia there was two models. There was a sort of entry-level, lower price point model without an OPV, and then there was a model that was called a professional, and that came with an OPV retrofitted. It may have even been fitted here in Australia by the importer, I don't know for sure. Anyway, this particular machine doesn't have an OPV. I'm going to show you how I've managed to install an OPV. In a previous review, we did have a machine in where I'd done that, so I thought I'd do that for you to show you how I went about doing it. It's actually really easy and, relatively speaking, quite inexpensive. There are kits you can buy, a lot of them are out of stock, and also they are quite expensive. So let's go ahead and have a go at doing it ourselves today. So first things first, make sure we have the machine unplugged. Don't want to have an unnecessarily powered up machine while you're opening and getting inside the back. So it's easy enough to get into to start with. All we need to do is whiz out all of these Phillips head screws. There's 6 of them, so just get them out quickly. So just lift that off, put that out of the way. Then you can see here we need to take off these screws here to lift the panels out. So we need to get access into the machine. So we'll just undo these. So that's all that holds the side panels on. But then you can just lift the whole side panel up and out. And just put them over there as well. And over here, with these out too. Now, Simonelli, in not having an OPV, was just trying to cut down on cost. It is, it's not heavy on materials. There's quite a bit of plastic involved, though. It is nicer to look at than the first model. The first model of Oscar, the Oscar I, was pretty much all plastic, and had issues with cracking and stuff. It had a metal frame, but then no metal around it. So in this instance, you're getting a metal panel on the front, metal panels on the side, but you do get a plastic. The back is a plastic panel that you have to wiggle, lift away and out to get rid of that. So just put that out of the way as well. All right, so this is the business end. So what you're seeing here, this down here is the pump. The pump is pumping the water out of the water tank at pressure up here into the through a solenoid, and that will be used to either refill the boiler or to be pushed through to the heat exchanger, and then out through the group, through the candle and through your coffee. So what you've got there is you've got the full pump pressure coming all the way through, and there's nothing impeding that pressure. So the idea is that you install an overpressure valve, and that the excess pressure that you don't need can be bled off and go back into the intake flow for the pump. So that's what we need to do, is we need to install something in here. So just having a quick look, a cheap one I've managed to find was the overpressure valve from an Isomac machine. I had one lying around for the last machine I did. This one I bought. It's a very inexpensive part. I think it was just a bit above 20 Australian dollars. So it's not a bad cost. Then you just need, there's an adapter, which is a 1/8 BSP female, because you need to connect two male fittings together, so that's easy to do. There you can buy them at a lot of sort of like industrial or hardware type stores. You will need a plastic T-piece, that you can get at just any old hardware store usually, and this one's I think it's like a 5 mil internal diameter, and you'll need some like silicone hose. That may be a little harder to find. If you have an old machine laying around, maybe you can salvage some out of an old machine. This one's, I think, a 5mm OD as well. So it's a bit of a tight fit on here. You've got to squish this on. So the idea here, the principle is, the pressure is coming through the overpressure valve, this way and this way, and the excess pressure will bleed out through this area here. This would be going down, and then the excess pressure goes down, and this is this area here. The excess water goes into it and is taken through into the infeed for the pump, so that goes into the pump. So it's pretty easy, and then you can swivel it. You can twist this out with some. You can get some pliers. And you can twist this out to reduce the pressure at which it bleeds off, or wind it in to increase the pressure at which it bleeds out. So then you can get a pressure gauge on your group and work out what pressure you're at. So we'll get to that later, but in the meantime, we've got to get that into there. So first things first, we spin this off. I had pre-undone that first, and then you've got this little nipple here that you need to take off. Okay, so we'll grab that off, and then you'll need to use some Loctite or something like that to get that back in next later. Also, what we need to do is, because when we're screwing this in, for instance, there's quite a throw of this, we'll need to move this out of the way as well. Alright, so spin this off. You have to do it with an, I had taken that off a little while ago, so I can do it by hand. Okay, that's off. Get that out of the way. And we can get this and take this off. Rightio. So we are then installing that in there. Okay, spin that on. So to do that, we'll grab a bit of Loctite. Spin that on. Turn that around. Turn that until it over there, about there. Then we can, from there, we can then get our hose on and get it down there. All right, and then we have the 1/8 BSP female to female adapter. Put a bit of Loctite in that. You can put it onto the so it's going on. No pro. There we go. Put that on. Right. Screw that on. Then we want to screw this nipple. Oh, I've already put the bit on. A bit more. This nipple into that. Right, so now what we need to do is we're actually, in the other kits, they have a system where you can retain this length of tube and you don't have to cut it. And like, you could try and bend it. I'm not a big fan of bending hoses and stuff, so what I was thinking, what the best thing to do is you want to get like a marker, and we'll basically reset the length of this. So we're just going to work out at what length that would press onto this nipple, and we're going to put a little bit of a mark there. Okay, and then we'll take this hose off at the bottom of the pump, and then we'll cut this hose down, and we'll have to flare out the end, or we'll have to warm it up a bit so we can flare out the end. So you see how the ends are flared? That happens when you press it onto this nipple and then bite it down with the screw. So I'm just going to need to cut this off here. So push that back, and we'll get a knife. My wife's kitchen knives, that'll do the trick. And then we just gently slice through it. There we go. And then you might want to get something to warm it up a bit. I'll just go over to the burner. Let's give the burner a little bit of tickle. Get a little tickle over the top of the burner. Start to burn it. Warm it up. Just to soften it. You don't need it to be like molten. It just needs to soften a bit, so that when you press it on, you can press it up all the way onto the nipple. Alright. And then we can then screw that up there. And I'll tighten it up in a minute. We'll get the bottom on. The bottom one on as well. It's in place. So they're both in place. So it's relatively easy. You don't want to like completely crush it. So you want to tighten it up, but you don't want to be hauling on it. Like it's starting to bite now, and that's, you don't want to like throw heaps of pressure through it. Otherwise, you'll sort of you'll end up crushing that to a thin layer, and then it won't really create much of a seal. So we want to put this back on. This was the other side here for the heat exchanger area. So we just want a dab of, we'll put a dab in there. Dab of the a little bit much. Don't want this one-way valve to end up seized up because it's full of like Loctite. So be careful there, don't pour Loctite in there like I just did. Just a little bit, but not lots. Nip that back. Nip that back up. Put the hose back on. So you got, what I've got here in terms of tools is like a 12mm spanner, and I've got a 13mm spanner, and I've got a little Phillips head screwdriver and a knife. So this adapter was just on the edge of 13. I managed to get enough of a bite with a 13mm, but probably something just a tiny bit bigger. Maybe from the imperial side. Again here, don't just fall on these. You get a little bit of a nip and then you just leave it at that, because if you go too hard, you'll crush that hose. Alright, so now what we need to do is we've got to get our outflow into the tank, into the exit of the tank. So lift up the tank, pop that to one side as well. And in here, you can see 2 screws holding this down, so we'll take them out. Then we can lift this up. You can see this is the inflow to the pump. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to splice this in here. So we want to we want to do that sort of down here somewhere. All right, not so close up here that you create an issue, because it's got a bend. So somewhere down here would be good. So you come in here and put it in there. So I'm going to cut that. Maybe, let's say, from the end of the hose, you're talking about 2 inches in. There's got a bit of water in there, so that will push. And here, make sure I've got this all the way on. Tight fit. When you get the tongue out of your mouth, you sort of thinking or pushing hard. Yeah, all right. This wire here is for the level sensor in the water tank, so that if there's not enough water, it will stop allowing the machine to run properly. So got that in place. Now we need to get this back down. So just make sure there that you haven't, it's not like kinked or something like that. Then you'd be starving the pump. So it looks okay to me in there like that. So we'll screw these back in. Because you don't want to end up in a situation where the line's kinked, because if your line's kinked, then your pump will be trying to pull water and it's not able to draw any in, and then you'll have like a low pressures because the pump can't sort of supply enough. That looks okay in there. So what we'll do is we're actually not going to put the whole thing back together because we'll need to potentially adjust this OPV because we'll need to do some pressure tests. We'll do that in a minute, but we'll get it partially back together. So that's done. Okay, you can put some of the side panels back on. This side panel I can the water tank. We want to keep this side open because we'll need to access it today. Upside down. This went through a bit of a rough transit to get to me. The post was not kind to this particular machine, or I should say, the person who packed it to send it didn't really get a lot of loving. Anyway, it'll be fine. Just that one tabbing thing. Plenty of tabs left. Right, so we're going to leave this open, and hence we'll leave the lid off. I'll just squeeze these down just so they don't rattle around too much. So what we're going to need to do now is we'll put some water in the tank and then we'll turn it on. And again, we have exposed. It is exposed, so be very, very careful. But we will need to potentially adjust this. So we'll test that first of all that we've got no leaks from our reconnections of these hoses, and we'll test the pressure that we're getting as it's coming out of the box, and then if need be we'll adjust. Okay. Boiler's actually up to temperature now, and we've had a fiddle around and I've unwound it. I ended up using just a pair of pliers. I took off the hose and wound it out a little bit and then plugged the hose back on. Just be mindful that you can overwind it and then it'll sort of pop out the other end. So if that happens, you'll have to put it back in and wind it back a bit, but we've got that to round about where we want to be. So I'll press the go button now and we'll run it up and we'll see what we got. Certainly getting some flow back through the valve now as it runs up. And we've got about 10 bar, so that's good. So that's how to install. So now I'm just going to put the machine back together, get this other side back on, it's nice and safe. So these ones are actually, you need to make sure you leave the middle one free, because that's what the lid attaches to, so it's either end. Panel. And you also just want to make sure that you're located on these, there's two tabs either here, like little round tabs. So you press down onto them and you see that sitting nice and flush there. And then we can excellent. So that is the Nuova Simonelli OPV home job done. I will include some links for the parts that I have used in today's video. But in the meantime, fire it up and keep caffeinated.